Welcome, Coral and Paul. Can you please share a little bit about yourself?
I'm leading product portfolio management for next generation grid management software at Siemens. My focus is on innovation, growth, development, and launch of software products for distribution utilities to help them accelerate the energy transition and the integration of DRs into the network.
Great. And I'm Paul Hines. I'm the Vice President of Power Systems at EnergyHub, and I lead our data science and next generation DER algorithm team. I came to EnergyHub about 2 years ago through the acquisition of a company called Packetized Energy that I helped to start with a couple of other engineering professors about 7 years ago. And so it's really great to be here, talk about the future of energy.
From your perspective, how has the role of DERs evolved over the past few years?
Yeah, it's really interesting. When the term DER first came out, it was really focused on things like rooftop solar, things that are generating electricity, and DERs were kind of seen as a threat. But now, if you think now today, smart thermostats, electric vehicles, smart water heaters, battery systems, there are a lot of new types of DERs, and these DERs have enormous capabilities to solve problems on the grid. And so I think we really need to shift how we think about DERs. There are enormous opportunities. These consumer-owned devices that were previously just loads are now actual, opportunities for solving problems in the grid. And thinking about them differently could create not a lot of new opportunities. What do you think, Coral?
Yeah, I think, like you, Paul, it's been really interesting to see how the role of these DRs has truly evolved from both an importance and criticality perspective. Initially, right, we didn't have penetration levels high enough for those DRs to have a significant impact. And their role was perhaps limited, right, in terms of the energy transition and the contributions that they could make. Then we start seeing adoption of DRs increasing. With that came a lot of speculation on what value they would really bring. And now we see more and more of these resources on the grid, and they truly are a critical factors for utilities in their energy transition story. Interesting also, we sort of see two sides of this story because we're at a point where that adoption of DRs is high enough where utilities can already today feel both the positive and negative impacts of those resources on the grid. On the negative side, already we know operators are seeing an increase in voltage issues in the control room. There's already an increase in terms of overloaded transformers. So the effects are very much real. But on the positive side, at the same time, that number and magnitude of VPPs is also increasing sharply. So really large opportunity here to leverage that for the benefit of the grid.
How can distribution utilities turn distributed energy resources into valuable assets?
So what's really interesting is utilities are already doing this today. EnergyHub has about 60 utility clients, and their customers have enrolled over 1.2 million DERs into programs. That's a lot of devices, and so DERs are already being valuable today. The virtual power plants that EnergyHub operates have about 2 gigawatts of load shifting capacity, and that's a really critical bulk grid resource, particularly on peak days in the summer and the winter. Think about places like Arizona, where we have over 275 megawatts of peak reduction capacity. That's become a really critical resource in how the grid operates. But they're not doing as much as they could, particularly as you think about the aging distribution network that the utility industry faces. There's a lot more that those devices can do. And so we're excited about this partnership with Siemens to figure out how can we enable those DERs to do more. What do you think, Coral?
Yeah, agree, Paul. Like you said, right, utilities are already getting value from those DRs today to help with grid operations. But like you said as well, we need to realize that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface in terms of the amount of value and potential that they could really unlock with these assets. And more importantly, that the current levels of flexibility that utilities are leveraging from DRs today is just really not enough to get us through the energy transition.
Mhm.
We can't think of possibly upgrading distribution infrastructure fast enough to meet net zero targets. So we really need to start thinking about leveraging a lot more of that DR flexibility that's already there, but that utilities just haven't tapped into.
Mhm.
The question we hear from a lot of utilities asking themselves is where and how do we start? And this is a struggle, right? Because there's very limited knowledge and visibility at the distribution network level today. So I think that one concrete first step utilities can work towards, and not just for turning those DRs into valuable assets, but as a first no regret move to improve planning, operations, and customer engagement overall.
Mhm.
For example, if utilities can have that visibility on, let's say, electric allocation of DERs, they can understand the impact those resources are having on all levels of the distribution grid, then we can now more effectively start encouraging EV owners of those heavily impacted transformers to charge at non-peak hours or look to implement managed charging solutions, leveraging EnergyHub platforms, for example.
What does the future of grid management look like for utilities?
Exciting. I see a future in which DRs are at the center of distribution operations, planning, and customer organizations, and being fully integrated and leveraged across departments to help accelerate the energy transition. And I see that future being enabled by modern, interoperable, and modular software, no more monoliths, with data-driven intelligent systems that help utilities de-risk with a short time to value. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I totally agree. We also at EnergyHub see a world in which DERs have a much more important role in the way that the power grid operates. Whether it's a rooftop solar system, a smart thermostat, an EV, all of these devices can work together to solve a lot of grid problems. But if we're going to do that, we need to leverage insights about where the challenges are probably going to be in the grid and where the DERs are within the grid. And so, we really need to figure out how do we connect the problem of DER management to what grid operators are doing in the control room. And so, if we do this right, it's not an easy problem, but if we do it right, I think it really lead us to a world in which all of the DERs are acting all year round, 24 hours, 7 days a week to solve grid problems.
The last question. How are Siemens and EnergyHub working together to accelerate the energy transition?
It's very exciting times. We have just launched a new product called DR Insights, which is a software application for distribution utilities that's providing a distribution grid model and visualization of critical areas of the grid, and including those distribution transformers that are being heavily impacted by EVs and PVs, along with key things like loading and voltage profiles, the location of those DERs, and then insights in terms of the behavior of those behind the meter assets. We're doing that by leveraging data utilities already have, like, for example, smart meters, and then combining that with machine learning algorithms to make it incredibly easy and fast to implement, and also leveraging our grid model building tool with automated workflows to get to that accurate digital representation of the grid faster than before. So we think this is giving utilities that visibility that they need, that first step to start improving planning and operations. And even more so, very excited that now, thanks to that partnership with EnergyHub, we can together help these utilities start unlocking that next level of DR flexibility and do even more with those resources with actionable data and a clear path on where and how to start. What do you think, Paul?
I totally agree. We're really excited about this partnership with Siemens. I think there's enormous potential to bring the DER capacity that EnergyHub has with that deep insight that's going to be provided by the DER Insights product, and more broadly, that deep connection into the utility control room. If we can really do this, I think it gets us a huge step forward toward that future where all the distributed energy devices are kind of working together to enable enormous amounts of renewable energy and, in the end, clean and resilient energy for all people. But if we're going to do that, we really need the DERs to solve problems in the distribution network. They need to support transportation electrification, for example, and they need to help to defer some of the really expensive system upgrades that might otherwise be needed to enable that electrification. So this is a really exciting partnership and gets us a long ways toward that future.